Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Davis, aka Mr. Fortify, and welcome to another episode of the Jericho Force podcast. I am really excited about our guest today. Remember, as always, we'll be discussing what does it mean to integrate faith into the work that we do? How do we live out our faith in the marketplace? Now, I'm going to tell you right now, the guest that we have on for today's show is one of my favorite people, and you're going to see why. Before I bring her on, let me introduce her. Juli Wenger is a trained coach, Enneagram expert, and human ecologist that has led the entrepreneur and CEO life with a 10-year history as a successful real estate agent and team leader. Her education includes everything from being Dare to Lead trained by one of Brene Brown's facilitators to self-compassion training through the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, to Enneagram training through the Narrative Ennegram, and current work on a Breathwork Facilitator certification. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Jericho Force podcast, Coach Juli Wenger. Juli, how are you doing today?
I'm so good. It's weird listening to my own bio, though.
I bet.
It's like an out-of-body experience. Like, oh yeah, I did that thing. Anyway.
I know what you mean. And folks, for those of you who don't know, I had the pleasure of being on Juli's podcast. We're going to come back to that here in a little bit. But Juli's a fellow podcaster, and I got to be on hers earlier in the year. And so I can identify with what she's saying. But what makes it better is because she is a good friend of mine. She is my sister in Christ. And now we get to flip the script a little bit. So Juli, I know a lot about your story, but the folks don't know. So as a coach, how did you get to this point with your professional background? Some of the folks heard that in your bio, but what makes Coach Juli of the present day? How did she get there?
You know, it's interesting because this is a looking backwards and seeing how God works kind of experience. When I finished high school and I was trying to decide what to do with my life, I made a decision based on what I thought would be perceived as successful. There's a lot of success chasing and a lot of gauging my worth, my decisions, my choices, the things I move towards by other people's expectations, or at least what I perceived those expectations to be. So I went off to university because there was a program I could actually get into that had an interior design minor. And I thought, oh, interior designers are cool. And that program ended up being this focus on how do people interact with their environments, their homes, their communities, their things. And so it started to give me a bit of a foundation in terms of psychology and how do people think? How do people connect? Which I totally didn't see, but I loved it. So I finished school. We bounce around a little. I've been married since I was 20. So it's been almost 17 years. And my husband's job, when we both finished university, moved us around a bit. And when we got back after a couple of years to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, where we live, the job that I was working in was soul sucking. It had nothing to do with the education I had from university. I was doing no interior design work. It was quality control and some brand management. So the brand piece was okay because it was kind of creative, but this was not what I was called to do. This was not filling my soul. There was nothing amazing about it. And so my husband says to me, well, maybe you should go into real estate because you like houses and people, which for the record is not a good reason to get into real estate. But, so I was like, no, I don't think I want to do this. And I just want to backstop this with, I was essentially a non-practicing closet Christian at this point in time. He was not raised in a Christian circle. I was raised in a Christian family. We spent a ton of time at work or at church. And lots of, parents on the worship team and running sound systems and doing the secretarial work back when we called that secretarial work. And so church was very much a part of my background, but it was neutral. There wasn't a really strong relationship there. There wasn't anything that was really potent for me. So I grow up and I get married and we just kind of ease into doing life the way that most of the world does life. And so I didn't ask God, hey, should I go do this thing? I asked a friend, and he happened to be at the new church that we were at. And he said to me, I think maybe not. I don't know if you're cut out for it. And I was like, just watch me can't, right? Because I don't take well to people telling me I can't do things. So, I mean, I appreciate that he was trying to protect me from what's a pretty dog eat dog industry, and you're going to get your feelings hurt and you're going to fail and it's quote unquote hard. And so I stepped in, and the first 4 years sucked. They were so hard. I'd never worked so hard in my life. I didn't understand that I was an entrepreneur. I didn't really understand that I was running my own business, because what's kind of insidious about real estate specifically is that there's all these structures around you. You have a brokerage you operate underneath, so they're the business, and you're like an independent contractor over here doing your own thing. So I didn't get it. But what I did get was I love to serve people. And I love to take care of people. So I tell people all the time, I succeeded in spite of myself, because I showed up and I worked hard every day, probably doing a lot of the wrong things, but I worked hard every single day and I just showed up for people. So the business started to grow. And at about year 4, it was close to the time that we actually had my first kid. And I was really questioning, is this what I'm supposed to do with my life? So at this point, we'd been back in a church circle for a few years, because when we'd moved back to Edmonton, I'd said to my husband, I need this community. I feel like there's something lacking. And so I had started to reconnect with my faith. And it was at this point in time that when I look back, I see that God started leading me towards my own growth path really actively. And it started with something very secular in Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. And that's where I started to get curious about, like, what am I doing real estate for? I'm not salesy. I'm not transactional. I don't want to push people into things. This just isn't, it doesn't fit with me.
Right.
And I got this perspective shift of, yeah, but you can make it fit you instead of you fitting it.
That's good.
Which is kind of a first experience into, you don't need to do the things the way that the world does them. You can do them my way, except I still kind of saw it as Juli's way. So the business started to grow quickly. We pretty much doubled the size in a year that was a downturn in our local economy. And so things were going really, really well. And I started to build out systems, and I started to build out a team. And so now I'm managing people, and I have assistants, and we have this whole staging warehouse inventory where we're doing all the things. There's a lot of moving pieces. This business it's got a lot to it and a lot of potential. And a few years go by and we have my second kid, and I hit anxiety. It's like, okay, I'm building and building and building. I'm growing and growing and growing. But like, I can't hold all the pieces. I can't do all the things, just really struggling. And it was the first time that I invested in a coach. And that coach helped me to work through what I see now as the first layers of my people pleasing.
Okay.
That essentially, here's what's interesting. I built this entire business around showing up for people at the expense of myself.
Oh, wow.
I wasn't taking care of me because I was so focused on making everybody else happy. making family happy, making my husband happy, making my extended family happy, making my friends happy, making every client happy, trying to make the agents on the other side of transactions happy, everybody. And so I was completely and totally drained. And I'd given so much of my power away to looking at other people's expectations and perceptions being the source of my value, that I essentially lost me in the process. So I had no boundaries. I had really low confidence. And when it did show up, it was for super short spurts. And I felt like a complete and total imposter in my business. And it's interesting because as this whole thing is going, I'm starting to slowly open up a little more to this personal relationship thing. And saying, okay, God, like, I can't do it. I can't hold this. I can't figure this out on my own. Like, I actually can't. I'm broken. And he filled in that space. But that space was still pretty small because I would call myself a recovering control freak. I want to control everything. I hold it tightly. I worry about what could go wrong. And there's not a lot of space for him to show up in that.
Yeah.
So I'm running this business and building this empire, but I'm not letting him show up for me. So where things really shifted was about 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, when I hit another layer, another level of wall. I'd been experiencing this anxiety, but I just pushed through it. Just push, just keep going, keep hustling, keep grinding it out, keep making it happen. And our business had hit $500,000 a year, which for most people is success.
Yeah.
Right? They're like, yeah, that's a big deal. You got a $500,000 business. How cool is that?
Right.
You got a team. How cool is that? Look what you're doing. How are you doing it? Can you teach me? And I was like going broke because I'm paying all these people. I'm not stewarding my money well. I'm not even paying attention to my money because I'm so wrapped up in fulfillment of everybody being happy and trying to grow this thing so that I can measure up, so that I can prove to myself that I'm valuable and that I'm worthy. And I had this coach ask me this question of, Juli, if your family was gone, if your business was gone, if your marriage was gone, if all of these titles and all of these jobs and all of these roles and all of these responsibilities were gone, who would you be?
Great question.
What? And fortunately, she shared my faith and she's like, I'm going to leave you in this room with a big whiteboard on the wall for as long as you need to sit here until you figure it out. Go pray about it. Listen to your worship music, whatever you need to do, cry. Like, I don't care. You're not coming out of this room until you figure it out. And it was a little harsh, but it worked. And you've heard me explain this part before, that where I came to was that I am love, joy, strength, light, and grace. And I had this moment of really realizing that, oh, that's what he is. So of course that's what I am. And it was the beginning of a journey to enoughness, which I'm not there on yet, but it was the beginning of it. And then I realized that all of this comparison I was doing against other people and all of the judgment that I had for other people was completely and totally unnecessary, because I could be special because he made me special with his own unique blend of himself placed in me. And he's done that for everybody else. It's like, oh, we're all special snowflakes, right? How millennial of me, but we're all special snowflakes. And we're all a little different, but we're all beautiful in our own way. And it was like, wow, mind blown. but I still had to contend with all of my patterns, and I still had to contend with all of my baggage, and I still had to create more space for him. So to jump ahead just a wee little bit, I get this clarity on, okay, Juli, this is who you are. And then he hits me over the head with the Enneagram. And I don't say hits me over the head lightly. It was coming at me from everywhere. And I'm one of these people that I swear God yells at me. He gets real loud when I ignore him, because I can get real loud. I can be pretty bold. I can be pretty out there. And he's like, hey, I'm using everything I've got to get your attention. Everything. Yeah. So the journey then led me into really starting to understand how he created me and what were my superpowers and what were the things that were really not built into me that I was trying to be. How was I trying to be like my husband or like my friends or like my colleagues that were innately not who I was meant to be or the gifts that I meant to have? And how could I instead embrace the ones that I actually do have?
Yes.
And that was this giant permission slip of just let it all go. Stop trying so hard. Stop trying to be like everybody else. Stop trying to do it the same way as everybody else and just be you. And from there came the clarity on what next. Because through all of this, I'm struggling with my business and going, how do I make this something I actually want? Because I have this business that is making a ton of money and it looks super successful and it's what I'm supposed to want, right? It's what the world tells me I should want.
Right.
But it's not what I want. I'm there, I'm making the money, I'm doing the things, I'm completely freaking miserable. So I'm asking, like, how do I fix this? How do I fix this? How do I fix this? What am I supposed to do with my life? And I realized that real estate was not it, which A is terrifying because I've spent 10 years attaching my identity to the success of this thing. And then what? Like, what? Are you kidding me, God? I don't want to do this. What? Like, I'm sorry. I don't think I'm down with this plan, right? Like, this is not my plan. My control freak is coming into play. Like, no, you have got to be kidding me. Yeah. And it's like, nope, this isn't it. And I got clarity that the next step or the next stage was coaching. So here's where I want to just touch on this quickly. My calling in life is not to be a coach. My calling is above that. But what filters through understanding that what he's placed me here for is to help people find his fire and trust their inner knowing, which is spirit, and live his purpose for their life and create impact and live fulfilled, which is essentially defined by following his will for you. That's it. And that filters down into, for right now, coach and podcaster and soon to be author and speaker and a bunch of other things. So all of that comes, and I'm starting to understand why I do the things that I do. And he's like, go do this thing. What? Like, maybe I can do both. Overachiever alert, but maybe I can do both, God. That would be cool. I could just keep doing real estate, this thing that makes me miserable. And I'll just add a coaching practice into it. Yeah, if they could all see my face right now. So then, blessing of all blessings, COVID. Okay. Like, there have been challenges with COVID. I get this. We have lost people. We have seen all kinds of trauma. We are seeing all kinds of mental health crisis. There are some really negative fallouts out of this, but he has been so present. So I'm running these two businesses, and the real estate business is still going full tilt, even though I resent it. And I'm building up this new business. And I have my first group program, and I have a few one-on-one clients, and the pandemic hits and real estate stops in its tracks.
Sure did.
2 months. Now, I am not a natural rester, which he has been working on with me. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to pivot all of my energy out of real estate into coaching.
Mhm.
This seems like a natural solution. So I started building out the coaching business more. And by the end of summer 2020, I had a full business. And I was like, don't know if I want to do this real estate thing anymore. And he had been very clear over that summer. I want you to jump.
Mm.
Yeah, well, maybe I need to figure out how to sell the company. No, I need you to jump. Yeah, well, maybe I need to like sell a few more houses first. Like if I could just close up these 4 deals and build up this buffer, just enough, then maybe I can. So here's what he does with these house deals. Gone. I'm like,
Mm.
what? Like, are you kidding me right now? Do you trust me yet? I don't know.
We're gonna see.
Transparently, I don't know if I do. And we went on a vacation towards the end of the summer and we came back and I couldn't check back in. I was like, if I never touch another real estate file for the rest of my life, just no. And that was the moment where I decided to leave it, combined with really getting clarity that there was an opportunity cost to me staying in the old business. And that opportunity cost was that all of the people he was calling me to were not
Yes,
going to
that's
get
good.
the transformation. All of the people that he was calling me to were not going to have that opportunity to find their fire and to
Mhm.
live their purpose and to be shaken out of some of those trees of all of these stories that they're committed to because I was supposed to do it. So
Yeah.
I walked away from a $500,000 business. And I thought it was going to be terrifying. And I thought people were going to say, are you crazy? And no one ever said that to me.
Mm.
No one. And the relief that I felt when I hung up my license was like nothing I've ever experienced before. And I think that it's
Wow.
because this is the first time I've said yes to the call. He's called me before and I've
Mhm.
said no. But this time there was no arguing with him. He's like, we are doing this thing, or I will like, what do I have to blow up?
Yeah.
What do I have to put up for roadblocks so that you will take this off ramp and go do the thing that I called you to?
Mhm.
Just go. I got you. So it's been a giant lesson in surrender, and it's been a really wild ride. It's a very
Wow.
long story, but
No, it was good, Julie, because I feel like a lot of business owners out there that are people of faith understanding what God wants to do and the process. And so you mentioned a few things. Number one, just how God began to draw you. There was a drawing that happened and him calling you back to him. So the spiritual growth that ensues. You know, a lot of times people just think, you know, we're just out here in the marketplace, we're selling, we're marketing, we're doing whatever, providing our product or service, but there's things happening along the way. And you talked about how you show up for other people. And it's interesting how there are parallels and how we allow our relationship with God. How do we allow that to show up? Do we kind of treat him like an absentee dad, or are we working in lockstep as a true partnership? You know, Julie, you being a woman, you're his daughter. You know, I'm his son. Is it like that, or is it more like a, you know, hey, well, I'll reach out when I need you, but I've got this. And so I think that was critical. And some of the things that you said and showing up, God drawing you in. You also touched on the power of coaching. And, you know, folks, if you're listening, there's a lot of different coaches that have different styles based on their personality. But one thing that I like to say, Julie, is coaching, it draws out the potential that's inside of you. That's what a really good coach does. And in your example, that's what that coach did for you. Now, granted, other coaches might have used different tactics, but she's still that coach. That's what she was doing. Listen, you need to figure out who you are and whose you
Mm.
are. So I'm not allowing you to leave this room until you know and understand that. That was powerful. And then the whole thing, Juli, about, who is it really about? Is it about my success, how much money I'm making? And you reminded me of John chapter 15, verse 5, when Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches, and apart from me, you can do nothing. And you and I have talked about this before. A lot of times when you hear a verse like that, you can romanticize or make it poetic. And it's not that it's not, but when you really grasp what Jesus is saying, when you read that whole full context of John chapter 15, he's really inviting you into a conversation and a notion that, look, I am the life giver, and life is found in me, and you need to abide in me. Abide meaning remain in me, be
Mhm.
constant with me. Because when you do, you get fed because I'm nutrition. So that when you then, because of that abiding, you then have what you need to go out into the world to impact the market, to make an impact, to influence others. And so that really jumped out. So you were saying it, and I love how that culminated into love, joy, strength, light, and grace. And so now when you walk into a customer meeting, when you walk in there with a client, you can hold your head up high, knowing that love, joy, strength, light, and grace is going to be part of that conversation. And I think a call to action, and this is where I kind of wanted to ask you, in going into not just your coaching, but even with God calling you to start your own podcast, is the opportunity cost. This was like my big takeaway. And Juli, every time we talk, we have many, but this was my one big one today. And who knows, you might drop like 3 more by the time we're done. But opportunity cost of not serving. There's people waiting out there. I've said this in another context, that we are supernaturally enabled to satisfy someone else's not yet. And you said it a different way, opportunity cost of not serving.
Mhm.
We're literally, when we're not obedient, when we don't listen, when we're being stubborn, there's other people waiting on the other side of that. And we don't always see that because, oh God, what about me? And what about this? And what about my family? And I don't know. And I don't want to do that. And he's like, if you could only see what I see. And that's where the faith walk comes in. So Juli, just in the coaching process, and then even when God called you to start the podcast, because we know, all right, I'm learning, I'm digging in. Okay, Lord, I started a business. Now all of a sudden you want me to start a podcast. And now you're in there really coaching. How has realizing that opportunity cost been? Like, okay, I'm doing the thing. How has that impact been showing up coaching your clients, and then even as you take interviews on the podcast God has called you to start?
Oh, the clarity on the opportunity cost, which pairs really beautifully with the clarity on what my calling is the thing
Mhm.
that pulls me through challenging days.
Mhm.
Because running your own business, being an entrepreneur, stepping into continual growth and up level, there's so many opportunities for imposter syndrome to show up. There's so many opportunities for an enemy to show up. There's so many opportunities for, old patterns to
Mhm.
take us out. Bad self talk, people pleasing, lack of boundaries, need for control, all of these things, it's
Yeah.
easy to default into those old spaces. And for me to be able to remind myself regularly, daily, continually, that this is who I am and who I am in Him, and
Mhm.
that this is what I'm here for, and that it's not about me, but it's about the impact I'm here to create. It's what allows Him to flow through.
Yeah.
It's what allows those coaching sessions to be really potent. It's what allows the interviews on the podcast to be really transformative. It's what I believe will allow the book, when the book's done, to be
Ooh.
life-changing, right? Like that's coming. He told me, clear your calendar, write my book. So here we are doing it. And all of these things that I'm talking about, they're up in my face this week. And you know that because we're close, but the stepping into a new space that he's called us to, there's a resistance there. And that resistance is partially us and our own ego and our need for safety and our need for certainty. And as Christians, it's also partly something outside of that, right? Like unseen forces. So I'm looking at all of these things and saying, yeah, and this thing he's called me to is greater than all of that. And he is greater than all of that. So I'm going to step in and I'm going to show up and let him do the work, because that's been clear too. And here's what you said that struck me. If you could only see what I see.
Yeah.
Because that was such a part of this journey, was starting to ask, help me see me the way you do. Not my skewed human perspective of myself, not my evaluation of myself against all of these other bars and expectations and checklists for enoughness and all these different spaces I operate. Help me see me the way you see me. Because 2 years ago, I wouldn't sit here and say, you know what, I am powerful and I am a change maker and I call people on their crap all day long and it doesn't bother me, and I empower people and I am here to speak on stages. I'm here to have a best-selling book. I can own that stuff because it's not egotistical, Juli speaking. It's the things that God has placed in me and purposed me for. And as long as I stay centered in that, I'm good. But, vine and branches, like when I get disconnected, when I get distracted, when I start swirling into my own stuff and I'm not checking in with him, it's not pretty. I'm not showing up effectively for anybody. There's a real life day-to-day impact of, am I choosing you today? Am I choosing you to give my time to first thing in the morning? Am I choosing you to check in with when I have a decision to make, or am I defaulting back into Juli knows? I got this, because I don't got this. I really don't. There's so many things I'm doing right now that I'm like, I don't even know what I'm stepping into right now, but he keeps showing up and he keeps providing and he keeps sending this army of really amazing humans, and it keeps shifting. As I grow, there's new communities or new groups or new people that are, you said this to me in just a voice note, speaking through him, speaking through those people to us. And that always helps bring me back to, oh yeah, it's this bigger picture thing. Oh yeah, it's not about me. It's not about my ego. It's not about my fear.
Right. Wow, that's good. That's good, Juli. So much there. When a lot of what you're talking about, Juli, is doing soul work, doing heart work. And in this life, especially out in the marketplace, and trust me, we know God uses all these things. There's coaching, there's classes, there's programs, and there's so much out there. Who's got the latest and greatest whatever? And you and I have both come to learn, and it's a process. None of us have arrived, but doing coursework, but without the heart work or the soul work, it almost makes it meaningless. And I say almost because there's no doubt people have created wonderful programs, and those programs can create transformation, but the real true transformation that occurs has to be inside out, not outside in, because outside in is just merely behavior modification. And we know that we serve a God that is not interested in behavior modification. He's interested in your heart being transformed. I mean, the root word in Christian is Christ. And so we're all meant to be Christ-like, which means we're in process of becoming more like him. And when we don't allow ourselves to be fed by the vine, the branches, they lose their nutrition. And I was just on a walk the other day, Juli, and it's fall season and we're coming up on it. And I couldn't help but look up at the trees. You see the colors starting to change, and you can see some of the branches that are detached from the vine or from the bark. And it was almost like in that moment, the Holy Spirit was letting me know, Jason, this is what John 15:5 looks like. Look at all of the vines and branches attached to me. They're upright. They're being fed, but the ones that start to dip low, or even depending on what tree or bush you're looking at, you can see ones that have already fallen off the branch. And so he just painted that for me. And as you were talking through your process and just answering that question, that was just the imagery I got. One of the things I was thinking about, Juli, is the coaching profession and I love you use this word a lot, that things can get woo. So what is it? What do we have access to as believers, and being in relationship with God and understanding his word? And you said it earlier, potency. So what's that level of potency that we have to where it can accomplish the goal, but we can also speak life into people. We can help people uncover purpose. We can redirect people and call things out of them, rather than just something that sounds weird or strange because someone had an okay or not a great coaching experience. So how does, in your experience, how does God show up in coaching?
Okay, so a couple of things. Now you've got me fired up. I mean, God shows up at transforming how we think. And that's one of your favorite passages. But this was this little aha moment for me recently of reading and going, oh, like, let me transform the way you think. And then after we transform how you think, then my calling on your life, then my will for you, then all of the things that I have for you and the direction and the path, like, then that becomes clear. This, then that. And I was like, oh, that's what coaching does. It transforms the way you think. So I had this little geek out moment. And woo. Okay. So this whole like woo woo. And I know some people are like, what's woo woo? And it's like the non-Christian, like crystals and stuff and like, I don't know, astrology, whatever. And look, I love a lot of people who follow woo things and have woo traditions, and I coach some of them. And I'm like, you know what? I'm here to love you. I'm not here to judge you. And as a Christian, I look at this and go, I don't need any of that. I mean, whether it works or doesn't work, I don't need any of that. There's a whole bunch of research on our subconscious and what we choose to give energy to and believe in and making that true. And, like, as far as I'm concerned, a lot of it is confirmation bias. It's placebo. It's like, we believe in it, so it exists. And I mean, who knows? Maybe God created an energy system in our bodies. I don't know, but I don't need to put my faith in that, because I can put my faith in him. And then I don't need all of that. And I think what's so attractive about it right now is that it's everywhere, and we're not out there sharing the gospel. We're not out there being loud enough. And I mean, I speak for myself here because I've been a closet Christian for a long time. We're not out there teaching, so people aren't aware of the beauty that exists within Christianity and the freedom that exists and the hope that exists. And like, they just don't know. So then they're getting all of this easily accessible, like, oh, just, put this crystal under your front step and then you'll block these spirits from entering your, what? So I just think we have something better. I know we have something better. And it makes all of that just irrelevant. It's that simple. It's just irrelevant. And God's been very clear with me that there's no, the spirit is the same. right? Because I've been told that before when I was really struggling with my identity in Christianity and what do I believe and do I have a solid enough foundation, and having a lot of woo people in my circles. They're like, it's the same spirit. And I was like, what? And I kind of questioned it for a while. And I was reading scripture and it's like, if it's, it does not claim me, it's not
Yeah.
me. And I was like, okay, that's it.
Mm.
That's all I need to know. So it's like my that's where I stand on that. I mean, I could get into like all sorts of weeds, and I think
Oh
it's
yeah,
important
sure.
for us as Christians to not approach that from a place of judgment or a place of shooting on people, but to live in a way that people can see that they don't need it.
Yeah.
And there's also, like the Bible's very clear about we can't expect the world to live by Christian expectations.
Mhm.
They are not held to the same standard
Yeah.
that we are. So that's my caveat on all of that.
That's good. I could feel the fire rising a little bit.
Claws
Well, I know,
out.
Julie. Yeah. I know as we get ready to close here, Julie, I know you can't say much because you're in the middle of your writing project, but some people, for those really detailed people, they go, wait, Jason, Julie said something about a book. So if there's anything high level, I mean, I'm not asking you to reveal title or anything, but can you reveal maybe a big theme that might go into the book?
Yes. I don't actually know what the title is going to be yet, so I can't reveal that because it's still in flux. But
Sure.
there's definitely going to be a focus on a lot of the pieces of the journey that he's brought me through. The not enoughness and the challenges that exist there, the getting clear on who you are and what you're here for and how to get out of your own way, on really integrating that so that you can live out the call that he's placed on your life. And pray for me all, because this is a big up level in terms of being bold about my faith. And he's been very clear, like, go be bold, go reach people. This is not a secular, watered down, kind of a
Right.
book, but go and really speak honestly about your own journey and the things that fire you up. So that's what I'm up to. And it's going to be fire.
Oh, I know it is.
It's
You
going to be
know,
all the fire.
I'll be cheering right along, waiting, and we'll have you right back here on the Jericho Forest podcast. Now, folks, if you hadn't caught the drift of what's happening, Julie's a very busy person. She's gonna be a published author soon. She coaches people. She has her own podcast. She speaks. Can I say this? She can sing. That's all I'm going to say.
It's one of my gifts. It's one of my gifts.
I didn't say she was going to record anything. I just said that she can sing. Whatever the Lord
poke,
does.
nudge, nudge. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. But with all of that, Julie, what are some upcoming events or things that you'd like to let people know that you have going on?
Yeah. The next masterclass that we're hosting is coming up on November the 5th. It's called I'm Successful, but I'm Not Happy. And so we're going to lean into some boundaries, living into other people's shoulds. And so I'm excited about that. And otherwise, we have put pretty much everything on the back burner in terms of our annual summit while I get the book written. So if they want, they can follow me on Instagram, or they can check out Becoming Ourselves, the podcast, and stay tuned there, or hop on the newsletter list. And as we plan things, as spirit moves for that, then we'll be the first to know.
I love it. I love it, folks. Now, you've clearly seen why she's one of my favorite people, and why you need to make sure you follow her, go listen to her podcast, and definitely support Coach Juli. Well, Juli, I wanted to say, as your brother in Christ, I'm so thankful that you came on the show today, really going deep and unpacking the journey God has brought you through, and continues to have you in process. That's what a lot of kingdom business owners, a lot of Christian business owners, entrepreneurs, people working corporate, they all need to hear that. And when we're able to share our story, again, to your point about the opportunity cost, I believe this exists with testimonies too. Somebody else needs to hear something, and it might unlock their ability to go to the next level. So I really appreciate what you shared on the Jericho Voice podcast today. So Juli, thank you so much for coming. And you know you'll be back. You already know that. Well, folks, that's all that we have on the Jericho Force podcast today. As we close out, remember, we always say a play on Romans chapter 12, verse 2. Don't conform to the world's way of doing business. Transform by doing business God's way. See you next time.